since I'm going to be doing a new video on stamp carving and I'm in a new location, new everything for me, new studio, etc., I'm going to also try some new formats. Hopefully I'm going to make sure I always have all the materials that you're going to need for this project in the beginning of the video, like now. So, first thing you're going to need... Let's try this again. Alright, for this video, for making your own stamps and stamp carving, I'm going to go through with, sounds like crap. Since I'm in a new location, new state, new studio, pretty much new everything, I'm going to try also doing my videos a little bit differently, creating a new way of doing them too. I want to make sure whenever I do a video that I have all the materials that you're going to need beforehand and go over them with you, so that way you know what you need when you sit down to do this. The first thing you are going to need is you will need your design. Now, this one is done on a computer, and we're going to transfer this image onto here. Now, this is done with an inkjet printer. It's not a laser. You can still use a laser, but this is with an inkjet, and that's why I'm doing it. It's on regular plain printer copier paper. I don't know how well this is going to work because this is a new process I'm going to try. I think it will work better with glossy paper because glossy paper doesn't absorb as much ink from the printer. But we're going to go with this cheap, inexpensive printer paper, copy paper, whatever you want to call it, with an inkjet printer. You're going to need stamp material. You can find a bunch of this stuff all over the place, Amazon. I'm going to use, and different versions of it, I'm going to be using the Speedball version here, the pink one. They call it the Speedy Carve. As you can see, here's the name right here. Speedy Carve. Because this is the best one that they sell, and it's the most dense and holds the most detail and will stand up to like pretty much all the... If you use any solvents or anything nasty with it, this is going to hold up better. You will also need, next thing, an iron. This is very important. This is going to help us transfer our image. And then you're going to need some kind of thing to press on with it. Either a wooden spoon, a bone folder, maybe a little spot printer like my little one here. And then you will also need your carving tools, whichever brand you're preferring to use. I like my Flex Cuts. That's what I use. Decently inexpensive and really good quality, made in the United States. We'll also need a little piece of wood like so. I just have this little piece of plywood that I cut it down off the corner of something. It's not even perfectly square, as you can see, and that doesn't bother me. It doesn't need to be perfectly square. And then finally you will need some glue. So either some really good wood glue or something. Any good really strong glue is a good thing to use. I am personally going to use liquid nails because this was what was in the garage. Then I will be using a caulk gun also with it because it is a caulk. If you can find this kind of stuff, liquid nails, this is the extreme heavy duty version. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what you need. Just regular liquid nails will work. But this is, like I said, what I have in the garage, so I'm going to use it with the caulk gun. But you can go out and you can buy this in little, if you can find it, in little tubes with a twist off cap, and that way you can reuse it. Alright, everyone, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my iron, I'm going to plug it in, make sure it's a little warm. It's not very hot right now, and I think I need to increase the temperature just a little bit on this. Because they don't actually tell you how much you're supposed to have this temperature up there. And then once I know that that's pretty hot, because it's already pretty warm, I'm going to immediately print out a new version of this. And why am I doing a new version? Because you want it as fresh as possible. And I'm going to leave it completely on the paper. And I want to put this more towards the corner. So I'm going to figure out where the corner of everything is here. Like so. And then going to take my iron and just set it right on here. Very slowly moving it in. I got some wood flakes on there. I'm just gonna kind of go like this with it and transfer this. Hopefully this image is going to transfer. Never done this before, and I've seen videos about you being able to do this. Didn't work very well, as I can see. Maybe this thing isn't hot enough. Let's try increasing the heat some more. I might have to do it for longer, because they don't really... I'm just going to slowly move it around here. Oh boy. Now that didn't transfer at all. I can't see if you could see that even there. Just a little bit. I mean, I got a little bit of an image, but not enough to really make it out to be able to carve it. So I'm going to let my iron heat up a little bit more and see if that does it and come back to this. Alright, I've let the iron sit for at least a minute or two here. This is the corner I was working on. I'm going to flip it over and try it in this corner again. And see if this works. I have it on a very high setting now. At least I assume it's a high setting. I'm just going to put some pressure on this. And I'm going to hold the iron here just a little bit on the corner. And then peel this up. Which is not working. Because I could feel the paper sticking to this material. So it's too hot. Ooh, that's very hot. Ooh, paper's even ripping. Ooh, I think you can see it's kind of melted it a little bit. So definitely way too hot. So I am not happy with this result at all. I am not happy with this. They say it can work, but I don't know. It didn't seem to work for me. Come on. Get that out of here. So the iron is a no-go. And you can kind of see right there that there's some weird transferring, but mostly I melted the rubber. I put it on definitely way too hot, and the low setting was way too low, so maybe I need to do a medium one, but I mean, this whole thing is pretty damn warm. And I think it's either A, it just doesn't work the way it should work. Oh wow, you can even see the melted on the paper. Or B, it's just this paper is too absorbent and will not. Well, everyone, as you can tell, you can see it right here. You can see all the nastiness on the board or on the stamp material. That I melted that stamp material right, you can see it right here, right onto the paper and things like that. It didn't turn out so great, and I was really unhappy with it. And when I tried it, either on too low of a setting or too high of a setting. So too low, I could barely even get anything. I don't even know if you can see any of that. You can barely see it on there, right? Yeah. It didn't work very well for me. And I've seen people do this, so I could see two different problems I had. Either I used the wrong temperature setting because it was either too high or too low, that didn't work, or it was my choice of paper. Since I used a really inexpensive printer paper, it probably absorbed a lot of the ink, so it didn't release a lot of the ink onto the block. If I would have used a glossy paper that the ink would have sat more on the top and would have absorbed less, it probably would have transferred a little better. I don't know. I'm not going to try a bunch of papers to do this. So instead, I'm going to do a different process, my tried and true method. Right here. So I have my paper, I have this printed out. Now this is cheap, inexpensive printer paper, but I did it on a laser printer. And that's what's important because this is going to release a lot better on a laser printer than it will with an inkjet, because you can't do it with an inkjet. So you're also going to need to use one of these. And if you can see it, it's the Chart Pack AD marker. This is their colorless blender. Now this stuff has I believe it's xylene in it, or it's acetone. I believe it's xylene, if I remember correctly in this. So you can actually use a brush and some xylene to do this too, but I choose these markers because they're a little bit easier to use. And then I will use, of course, my bone folder. So I'm just changing my process, and I'm going to show you that now. Alright, so we're going to try the process again differently this time. And if you can see here, this is the corner I originally tried with the real light thing. So I'm going to do it in the other corner, not on the side where it's melted, because I'm not going to use that side. So I have my image. And when you do this, and especially if you're doing text, you want to print it the way you can read it, because when you transfer, it's going to transfer backwards, which is the way you want it to go. So there's that. And then all you need to do, I'm going to hold that down with that, take your colorless blender here, and you just do a quick highlight of the area, like so. Hold it down real good. You don't want to use too much of this, because if you use too much of it, you'll melt the toner image a lot more, and it can get kind of stringy and blurry. And as long as you can just use it to make out, it may be fine. But if you look here, that's already so much better. And I can read this. Now I'm going to go ahead and start carving this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it down. I'm just going to use my little, it's an X-Acto, but it's just a box cutter. And you just, I would like to work in sections, so I will do 2 cuts. One shallow and one a little deeper than the second one, because I don't need all this material. Like so. So there's all that. I'm actually going to trim it down another 3/16 of an inch. 3/32, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't need to be perfect, because it doesn't really matter unless you're that kind of person that really cares about it. Oh, can't really see that, can you guys? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to carve this. Alright, as you can see here, I've carved away quite a bit of everything, and it looks pretty perfect to me. The last thing to do is a test print. The only problem I have is, I know this could be used with a stamp pad, and I'm not going to have a stamp pad. I don't think big enough for this. You can kind of see where, and you notice I carved away pretty deep on the sides of everything here. And even as I was carving, I was moving the stamp and keeping my thing stationary, because that helps. It's actually quite a bit easier. I was using very many different tools in case you didn't see. So here's one. This was my standard little V gouge that I use. You can see the little V. And I also use the little U gouge, as you can see here. And that helped make more U-shaped ones. I also have a shallower U gouge that I was using, a really flat, shallow, wide one for removing large areas. Another little, it's a little deeper one, as you can see there. And then another larger V gouge, which actually helps. A lot of these larger ones just help remove material a lot faster, which is one of the things I like to do with it. So I'm going to test this out a little bit with some ink, and hopefully we can get this going. Alright, so we're going to give this thing a little test print, hopefully. And this is just a stamp pad. It's Studio G pigmented ink, so it's supposed to be a better quality than just your dye-based stamp pads. And I'm going to do it like this. Hopefully it will work out really well. And it also allows me to see everything here, as you can see. And this is because I'm rocking it so much, as you can see with the print. Upside down. Baby in bloom. So I can see some areas that I need to carve away here. That can, it wouldn't hurt to carve away a little extra in some of these areas. Definitely, I'm going to use one of my Japanese skewer type ones to kind of just get right up in there and remove some of this area. So it's more like a knife. You could use an X-Acto to do this too. That'd be fine too. Where's that part? And you kind of see here where everything, that was a little issue. Oh, there's a little bit, some more. Oh, that was rolling all away. You can see some of the areas. I'm just going to use this little U gouge here, a deep one. Boy, it just does not want to go off. And doing this like this, the more you carve away, the better your stamp will be. And this thing isn't like super smooth, as you can tell. It's got little problems, and that's okay. My mother knows it was not going to be perfect. I do not like carving on this type of material. It takes a lot more practice to use it. I don't use it very often. It is, in my opinion, more difficult to carve than regular linoleum, at least detail-wise. I mean, it's super easy, it's smooth, and you can get right in there, and you can remove a lot of material, and you do it very easily. Like, it glides through this like butter, and that's part of the reason I say it's harder, is because it's so soft that it's just not been that... I'm not ever that happy with it. And normally I don't do stamping at all. I do relief printmaking, so it's a little different. Of course, I'm doing this and rocking it and rolling it and doing all these things you normally wouldn't do as much. If I just push just down in the major areas, see, that's not that bad. even with all that ink on there, you didn't get that much of a thing right there. So I'll probably carve away a little bit more on the edges right here. Ooh, that ink is really making this slippery. Making it harder to carve into this, but that's okay. I'll eventually get to it. It's just ink. Now I'm going to carve this down a little bit more, flatten it out. And the smoother you can get this, the less likely you're going to have these inclusions like this on there. But it's also going to go away a little bit more too when I glue this thing down. So it goes down there. And I got rid of a lot of the things that looks like it was making marks under that eye. Well, it looks pretty good there. I think that's good there. Let's clean this up. I'm just going to use some paper towel on it. And I would normally use some kind of Windex too. I like using Windex to clean up things. It's very messless, so to speak. It creates very little mess. I just squirt some Windex on here and spray it off and you'll be fine. But overall, it prints well and I'm happy with that. I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to go prep my glue. Alright. So I have my, that doesn't help me, now does it? But I have my my glue gun here, or my caulking gun, whichever you want to call it. I just realized for some reason it didn't stay inside of the thing. Didn't get it inside there. It took me a little bit of time to try and open up the end some more so it would ooze out some. You can see how all the dried stuff, and then it started getting more liquidy, and then it just started gushing right out. And I'm just going to use some kind of I'm just going to put a bead of it like this on the back. Don't need a whole lot, as you can see. Then I'm just going to take my piece of wood here. I'm just going to kind of move it around here so it just gets an even coating on here. And then let's go like this. Let's just spread it around with our finger. That'll make it a little easier. A little bit more here. Oop, that's tricky and messy. It's messy. But we want a good amount on here. And it doesn't matter if we cover the whole thing of this. You can either try and clean it off later or something and whatnot. So I have this here. Oh, right there. I'm just going to try and clean some of this off of here because I coated it really well on the wood. Very careful here not to get ink on the top right there. Now that I've got that there, you can just let it sit there and dry, and if you really want to, you can put another piece of wood on top of here and create a sandwich and use a clamp just to hold it down. But this will be good enough. And now that it's not going to flex, we have ourselves a self-made stamp. And for people who like to do stamp making, stamp carving, or just, stamping and use stamps in their artwork, this is a great way of doing it. Just using the safety carve, or the, what do they call it? This Speedball Speedy Carve, the pink one, which is the high-end one. Now, like I said, I don't like using it because it's so soft. Sometimes the things like this, it likes to move on you a little bit, and you have to use really, really, really sharp tools. So keep your tools really sharp if you do it. You can do it with the inexpensive tools, but if you're going to go for detail, something small like this with detail, you want to make sure you're using really sharp tools. So make sure you do that. So I'm going to let this dry, and we'll come back to this in just a moment. Well, everyone, that is how you make your own custom stamp. Right here, as you can see. It's quite easy to do. I'm even thinking about maybe next time trying to do this with a large rubber eraser. Because I normally don't work on this kind of material very often. And I remember why. Because it's unforgiving in a way it's so forgiving, so to speak. It's so soft, I find it very difficult to carve any form of detail. I normally like to make small things and detailed things, and that's why I use linoleum, and it works well for that. It's nice and fine, it's hard, it holds a good edge, but I think something else might work better next time. In fact, I have found Tombow Mono Pencil Eraser. This is the biggest pencil eraser I've seen, besides those novelty big pink ones that you've seen before. And this one's not a novelty one, this is an actual plastic eraser. I think this thing would probably carve very well. I'll give it a try sometime too. Like I said, because I don't really do much with stamps and do things like that for stamps. But, like I said, I made this one for my mom. And a little tip that I was telling you guys about was when you're carving it, sometimes it's easier to move the block than it is to move your tool. Because you can keep the block steady and you can just move this very carefully, and it makes it so much easier to do. But yeah, you mount it to the wood, only because it makes it stiffer and it's easier to use and it's less likely to flex, which means you're less likely to get all those little inclusions too. So that's it. I will see everyone next time. Remember, give me a thumbs up down below, or you can subscribe to me if you want to follow more of what I do and learn some more things. So next time, everyone, see ya.